All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into one of history's most enduring mysteries.
Nostradamus.
Nostradamus, that's right. This 16th century French astrologer and physician who some say predicted the future.
Famous for those cryptic quatrains
Exactly, those four-line verses packed with symbolism, and
and open to a whole lot of interpretation.
which is exactly why we're here. We've got a mountain of sources,
Articles, historical accounts, even some modern takes on Nostradamus.
and we're going to try and make sense of it all. Now, let me just say up front, we're not here to definitively prove or debunk anything.
Nope, not going to give you a yes or no on whether he was a true prophet.
What we are going to do is unpack the man himself, the historical context of his writings, the way people have interpreted those writings over the centuries, and of course,
The evidence, or sometimes lack of it, to support those interpretations.
and maybe we'll touch on why we're all still so fascinated by this guy after all this time. So let's start with the man himself, Nostradamus, living in 16th century France, a time of plagues, wars, religious upheaval. I mean, talk about a recipe for anxiety about the future, right?
You can just imagine the collective sense of uncertainty back then, people desperate for answers, for some glimpse of what's to come.
And into that atmosphere steps Nostradamus, publishing his Les Prophéties, this collection of almost 1,000 quatrains. And boom, suddenly people are claiming he predicted everything,
Everything from the French Revolution,
to the rise of Hitler.
even 9/11.
It's almost like he left behind this giant puzzle, and folks have been scrambling to put the pieces together ever since.
Now, hold on a sec. That's where things get a little, shall we say, tricky, because a lot of the so-called evidence for Nostradamus's predictive powers comes from looking back after events have already happened.
Ah, so you're saying it's kind of like looking at a completed puzzle and then trying to figure out where each piece fits.
Exactly. Does that really count as predicting if you're working backwards from the outcome?
Good point. Makes you wonder, were these truly predictions made beforehand, or are we just really good at finding patterns after the fact?
That's the million-dollar question.
And it's a question that leads us straight into conspiracy theory territory, because some folks believe Nostradamus wasn't just vaguely predicting big events.
They think he was leaving behind coded messages, warnings maybe, about hidden agendas, or even those apocalyptic scenarios we hear so much about.
Right, like secret societies controlling the world, cataclysmic events that will reshape civilization as we know it. It's all very cloak and dagger.
Very intriguing, for sure.
Absolutely. But also potentially very misleading because, let's be honest, those quatrains, they're so open to interpretation.
They're practically begging you to find connections, even if those connections might not actually be there.
All right, let's get specific here. One example that always gets thrown around is Century VI, Quatrain 75, the one people say predicted the Great Fire of London in 1666.
Oh yeah, that one talks about blood of the just being spilled in fire, consuming a great city. Sounds pretty spot on at first glance, right?
Chilling, right? But then you dig a little deeper and find out London had already experienced several major fires before 1666.
And that phrase, blood of the just, well, that's so broad, it could apply to almost any conflict or disaster.
Okay, so maybe that one's a stretch. But what about Century 1, Quatrain 40, the one some connect to the assassination of JFK?
This one mentions a young lion overcoming an older one in single combat.
People point to Lee Harvey Oswald as the young lion and JFK as the older one,
And there's that reference to a place with a name that some have twisted to mean Dallas.
where the assassination took place. Spooky, right?
It does seem that way, but again, are we just imposing meaning after the fact? Could this quatrain be about any other situation where a younger person challenges and defeats an older one?
That's the thing with his prophecies, isn't it? It's like a Rorschach test. You kind of see what you want to see.
You said it, and when you throw in the allure of secret societies and hidden messages, well, it's even more tempting to connect the dots in a way that confirms your beliefs.
Okay, speaking of tempting, we got to talk about the apocalyptic predictions that have become, well, kind of synonymous with Nostradamus.
Quatrains about great kings being overthrown, heavenly fire, floods and earthquakes, the imagery is pretty intense.
And those images have been used throughout history to, well, fuel those end-of-the-world anxieties.
You know, we've all seen those headlines, Nostradamus predicted the end is near.
Right. It's hard not to get swept up in that kind of speculation, especially when events in the world seem to be mirroring those prophecies.
It's crucial to remember that Nostradamus wasn't writing a history book. These quatrains are more like poetry, full of metaphors and symbolism, designed to spark our imaginations and get us thinking about those big existential questions.
So how do we separate the genuine insights from the unfounded claims? How do we navigate this world of prophecy and interpretation without falling down that rabbit hole of conspiracy theories?
Well, that's what we'll be exploring further as we dive deeper into the world of Nostradamus.
So stick with us, folks. Things are about to get really, really interesting. It's amazing, isn't it, how these prophecies, you can interpret them on so many different levels. I mean, we've talked about the literal predictions, the symbolic interpretations, but what about the deeper stuff? Like, why are we in the 21st century still so captivated by these cryptic verses?
I think it goes beyond just historical curiosity. It's like Nostradamus, he taps into something fundamental in us, that human need to understand what's coming next, to feel in control when the world feels, well, a bit chaotic.
Especially these days, right? Climate change, global conflicts, technology changing everything so fast it makes your head spin. It's no wonder people are searching for answers, for some kind of roadmap of the future.
Exactly. And Nostradamus, with his cryptic pronouncements about future events, he kind of offers that, right? That illusion of insight, a peek behind the curtain of time, if you will.
It's like, those online personality quizzes we all love, but on like a massive scale. We're looking for patterns, searching for meaning, trying to figure out where we fit in the grand scheme of things.
But with Nostradamus, the stakes are so much higher. It's not just about what career you should choose, it's about potential wars, disasters, even the fate of humanity. No wonder people get drawn in.
So maybe instead of dismissing those who believe in Nostradamus's prophecies as, gullible or superstitious, we should think about those deeper needs, those psychological needs that are being met.
I completely agree. Think about it. Nostradamus lived in a time of immense upheaval, not that different from our own time, really. And those prophecies, they might have given him and the people around him a sense of order, a way to make sense of the chaos.
And maybe for some people, those prophecies still offer that same comfort, that sense of structure in a world that feels increasingly uncertain.
And it's worth noting, Nostradamus didn't just predict doom and gloom. Some of his prophecies, they hint at a brighter future, a golden age of peace and prosperity after a period of, well, great upheaval.
Sounds pretty good right about now, doesn't it? A little glimmer of hope in all the uncertainty.
It does, and that hope, even if it's based on a subjective interpretation of ancient verses, it can be a powerful thing.
But let's be real. Some of the interpretations out there are, well, let's just say out there. I mean, we've got secret societies, hidden messages, apocalyptic scenarios that would make even the most hardcore sci-fi fans scratch their head.
Right, that's where things get murky, that line between genuine interpretation and, well, full-blown conspiracy theory.
It's like a choose-your-own-adventure with history. You pick and choose the prophecies that fit your worldview, connect the dots in a way that, confirms your beliefs, and ta-da, you've got yourself a Nostradamus-approved conspiracy theory.
And with the internet, it's just exploded, hasn't it? Anyone can publish their own interpretations, connect Nostradamus to current events, spread those ideas to a global audience.
Like a giant game of telephone, each retelling adding a new layer of speculation, a little more embellishment.
And remember, folks, correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because a quatrain vaguely mentions something that, I don't know, seems to relate to a historical event doesn't mean Nostradamus actually predicted it.
Right, we have to watch out for that confirmation bias, that tendency to seek out information that confirms what we already believe and ignore the stuff that contradicts it.
Easy to fall into that trap, especially with something as, well, enigmatic and open to interpretation as Nostradamus's prophecies.
So how do we find that balance? How do we appreciate the mystery, the allure of Nostradamus without getting swept away by misinformation or unfounded claims?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And it's one we'll be tackling head on as we continue our deep dive into the world of Nostradamus.
Man, it's like we've gone deeper and deeper down this Nostradamus rabbit hole, and I'm not even sure I want to climb back out yet. You know what I mean? We've talked about the predictions, the symbols, the conspiracy theories, but it's like the more we uncover, the more mysterious he becomes.
That's the thing about Nostradamus, isn't it? He's this enduring enigma, and that's exactly what keeps drawing people back to him century after century.
I did. It's like his prophecies, they're a mirror reflecting our anxieties and hopes and that fascination with the unknown all at the same time.
Exactly, that what-if factor.
What if he really did see glimpses of the future? What if these cryptic verses, they actually hold the key to understanding our times, maybe even our destiny?
It's a tantalizing thought, no doubt about it.
It is.
And while a healthy dose of skepticism is always a good thing, gotta keep that in mind, there's something to be said for the power of imagination.
Right.
The way Nostradamus' writings, they can spark our curiosity and get us thinking about the bigger picture.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Whether you believe he was a true prophet or just a really, really clever writer, you can't deny that Nostradamus, he forces us to confront some big questions.
Big questions about history, fate, even the nature of time itself.
And maybe that's the real takeaway from all of this, from this whole deep dive, right?
Maybe.
It's not about finding all the answers, proving or disproving every single prophecy.
It's about that journey of inquiry, of thinking critically, exploring all the different perspectives and interpretations.
It's like we're all detectives, sort of
Yeah.
sifting through those historical clues, piecing together those fragments of information, trying to make sense of this big, messy world.
And like any good detective, we have to be willing to follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it takes us down some unexpected paths.
So where does that leave us? Is Nostradamus a prophet, a poet, a puzzle? I mean, what do you think?
At the end of the day, I think that's for each of us to decide. There's no one right answer, no definitive interpretation, and that's part of what makes Nostradamus so compelling.
Right.
That ambiguity, the way his writings can spark debate and inspire countless interpretations, it's all part of the package.
And maybe in all that debating and questioning and searching for meaning, we learn as much about ourselves as we do about Nostradamus.
It's a journey, a deep dive into our own fascination with time and fate and the mysteries that surround them.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our exploration of Nostradamus. We hope this deep dive sparked your curiosity, challenged your assumptions, and maybe even left you with more questions than answers.
Remember, the quest for knowledge, it never really ends. So keep exploring, keep questioning, keep diving deep into those topics that intrigue you. And until next time, happy deep diving.